Hey. It's my favorite song.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
How's it going, Xalavier?
It is around 12:31 here in Italy, so I'm
You're in
simultaneously
Italy?
very tired.
Oh,
and
no.
Extremely excited.
And now I feel even better that there was a half hour after I said we were going to call you.
Tell you that we're always late, did we?
I kind of did.
Okay, good.
Well, I've done a few things like this myself before, and it never goes on time. It never
I
does.
love the ceiling where you are right now.
It's kind of nice.
Why are you in Italy?
That's where my family is, so that's where I am right now.
I'm so jealous. Why didn't we just go to him?
I know. We
record
should have
this?
just gone to Italy so that we could record this live.
Next time.
I totally would have brought you. You could sit on the ceiling, I could sit down here, and we could just have a chat.
Yep. Like the little spider that I am.
Oh, you're a spider now.
Now I am.
All right, good.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners, so people can get a little bit into the mind of. I'm going to say it wrong again.
Now we can't say it right because we're so paranoid about saying it
Xalavier
wrong.
Nelson Jr.
That was actually perfect.
Nice.
I was like,
Xalavier.
yeah, it was a critical hit, just right when you needed it.
Where's the D20? Yeah. That was a 6.
Oh.
All right. So yeah, go ahead.
My name is Xalavier Nelson Jr. I'm a freelance game developer specializing in narrative and writing. I dabble quite a bit into physical games. That's one of the things I freelance for. I love them ever since I got inducted into role-playing by some army dudes at a radio station that I interned at a few years ago. And I'm also a columnist for PC Gamer magazine, so I'm always busy and always tired. So this is nothing different for me. This is just
Okay, good.
standard state.
You would just be up at this time
Except you're-
playing games anyway.
Making them.
And making them too. Very cool. So yeah, what's Dungeons and Dragons wise? When did you
I want to
start?
hear more about this intern.
Oh yeah, then we'll go back
the-
to the internship at the radio station
That's
because
how
that
you
sounds
got
pretty
into it?
exciting. Is that how you got into it?
Yeah, that's how I got into it.
What was the dungeon master to say like, hey, we need someone to
Hey,
play?
intern, get over here.
That's part of your duties. You must play with us.
Yeah, that was basically how it was presented. If I wanted to stay on, you better come in on a Saturday and sit in this room for 7 hours, which I did happily. And we were playing Gamma World.
Oh, I love Gamma World.
It's such a treasure. We were playing Gamma World. They sent me like 3 source books via email, and I had to like study this in my spare time. I'm like, oh gosh, how much of this am I going to use? So I went through this long, arduous process, finally building a character, coming to the session, and within the first hour. See, I had built my mutants to have fire glands to be able to expel fire, and we had just finished defeating this giant monster made of vines in this massive dungeon, also made entirely of vines, above us, around us. And I had the brilliant idea of using my fire powers to blow a hole through to the center of the maze and bypass all of the encounters. Long story short, that didn't go so well, and we spent the next 5 hours dealing with hordes of vicious dogmen, as well as the smoke that arises from setting an entire dungeon made of organic life on fire. Yeah,
Oosh.
And that was the perfect introduction to both the chaos and the collaborative storytelling of physical games for me, and I've been kind of hooked into dabbling into tabletop stuff ever since.
That's interesting. Did you ever move on to away from Gamma World into other systems?
I ended up making my own. I ended up making actually a couple different things. One as a setting agnostic thing to use for friends that I put out for free, and another one as like an empathetic tabletop experience about living with intrusive thoughts.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
What?
What's that all about? Living with intrusive, like a multiple personality type intrusive thoughts?
It's just like the scary idea of sometimes like when you just have a thought, like someone cuts in front of you in traffic and you're just like, God, I hate that guy. I hope he crashes. And you're like, oh gosh, that's a terrible thing to think. It's sort of a very genre-y way of approaching, saying, okay, if you have these thoughts or you have them on a more serious basis, what is that like to live with that? I tried to do that in a tabletop form. I don't know if it worked, but I did it. And I've also really enjoyed D&D is something I haven't had too many chances to play properly, but it's something I've studied a whole lot. It's something with a ton of history, which is super interesting to dig into. And the character sheets, I'm a character sheet nerd. So the character sheets and how much y'all manage to fit onto a character sheet, the way you present information, it's a marvel. And it's something I studied a lot when I was getting initially into tabletop design, and it's served me really well since. Planescape Torment is also the biggest influence on my storytelling that I've basically ever had. And so there's D&D and Gamma World and just basically wizard stuff all throughout my creative history that influences me a ton to this day.
That's cool. What about the character sheet that you know, why is that exciting to you? Is it just because it's like this artifact that is your representation of your character, or is it the typography and how it's all that information is presented? What about it kind of excites you?
Well, the way you say excites me, I don't want it to sound like I'm a character sheet fetishist.
Well,
just a nerd.
You did say a nerd about it. That's yeah. Because I am too. I mean, I like when I see ones that have a design that is different from one I've ever seen before, but is immediately evocative about that particular campaign. Like I see that all the time. I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I had the chops to design something like that sometime. So, is that what it is? Yeah. Talk a little bit more about that.
A more design-focused aspect, something that I found in particularly my game development work, is how important details are, because nobody notices them, but just those small details really play a large part in getting someone into the spirit of a game, helping them obey rules, helping them find ways to break rules in unexpected ways. So for character sheets, what makes them so exciting to me is sort of reverse engineering, saying, okay, here's all of this information. Why is this information important? Why is the race here? Where is it placed, and what role does that play in how someone creates their character and then plays it? How can they refer to their stats? How is that presented so it's super easy to just go back and reference it? Basically, anything that goes into the detail-oriented design of a character sheet, I'm super into studying and observing, because it's small artifacts like that people don't tend to look at, but really show some of the most thought, particularly when it looks simple. Because when it looks simple, it probably means that there's been hundreds of hours of toil that's gone into it. And you can definitely see that in the 5th edition character sheet, which, again, was something I studied a lot when I first got into tabletop design, and I still absolutely love the look and the design of that thing.
So before you got into play D&D or Gamma World with as an intern, like how long ago was that? Because it doesn't sound like you've been playing D&D or tabletop games, because you're more of a digital gamer. Is that true?
I started with digital games when I was younger, but yeah, tabletop is a very recent development for me. And as soon as I got into it, though, I was like, oh, so this is what they've been talking about all this time.
Yeah, because like it sounds like, because I was looking at your credits and I was looking at your blog, and like you've done a lot with tabletop, which I'm surprised, I guess, that like you've done so much so quickly. How do you do this?
Are you cloned?
Obsession, a few blood packs.
Okay.
I might have had a few chats with the Raven Queen, but mainly it's realizing how little time I have. I'm a younger dude, and life is going to advance really quickly, and there's going to be a time in my life where I'm going to be cutting grapes into eighths, and that's going to be my sole joyful focus.
It will happen. If you take that infant CPR class, it will happen to you too. I promise.
So I wanted to
way to call back to the intro, though. That's good stuff. Yeah, so you strike while the iron is hot. Is that what you're saying? Like, while you have time, make it happen? I like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and going back to what you were saying about the character sheet, like it's one of those things when people talk about the like film scores or something like that, they're like, you don't notice the details of, okay, that's a violin playing or blah, 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 but you know it because it evokes a certain amount of emotion in you when you're watching a film or something like that. And I feel like character sheets are one of those things for tabletop role-playing games where you don't necessarily realize that, like, oh, having the initiative on top or having these skills in a place that they're easily associated next to the stats. Like, you don't really realize those details when you're playing, but like if it's off or it feels wrong, you will notice it then.
Yeah, when I was designing my system Ellipses and looking at how can I make something that's more accessible that me and my friends can get playing really quickly and not have to deal with a bunch of rules, all of the numbers, how you fill in your character sheet and identify what skills you have, they're all ellipses, these little ovals, and you fill them in with a crayon. And I did that because coloring is fun.
Yeah.
And it's just little weird things like that. It's like, okay, you want to evoke a final feeling for someone. What are the steps to do that? And sometimes the change can be very simple. Sometimes it's very difficult. But either way, that's where a lot of the magic of creation really is.
Is in the details.
Yeah, I'm curious about this. The Ellipses, is that the RPG that you developed to get people into role-playing games really quickly? Or
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I thought it was ...
Oh, you're thinking of something else.
I was thinking of a different ellipse.
Yeah, I made a game called Screw You Bear Dad once upon a
Best
time.
title ever.
Yeah, I love that title.
It's been running through my head all day.
And I've since learned that I really should continue to make games with weird titles like that, because as soon as you say, oh, it's my Ellipses role-playing thing, you type in Ellipses into Google, and you just see a bunch of dots. There's dots everywhere. I designed Ellipses after playing Gamma World and being terrified when they sent me all the source books I had to study. Yeah. I really enjoyed studying those source books. So I was like, okay, there has to be something, some sort of way I can do this more quickly, especially if I want to run a lot of one-offs with friends with how much time I'm spending obsessively developing things. So I stripped it back to health, your level, your skills, some backstory. I basically identified the elements that I really wanted to advance with the system. I put that in there, and the big advancement I think it does is this thing called the log. As I said, Planescape Torment was a huge influence for me. And what I really took away from it was, oh gosh, when I do something, I don't just get rewarded XP points for it, but a physical effect can happen on my character that can carry through that adventure. So I made this log where, based on certain things that you do or certain things that happen in your world, you can add the event, and your DM can say, okay, in the future, since you gazed into the abyss and it gazed back and you ended up having a loving relationship and 3 kids, sometimes you can summon those kids into this plane of existence. That's the effect. Boom.
That's neat.
Yeah.
I haven't had that personal experience, but now I really want to make that.
Now I want to. How do I summon kids?
How do you summon them out?
Yeah, that's
plane
with grapes. Like, go ahead, get out of here.
Eat a full grape.
Have a full grape.
It's your life. It's in your hands now.
That's interesting. So that it becomes less about the memories or the stories that you tell of what happened at the table, but like those things actually have an effect on the game and the mechanics of what's happening. Like that's really interesting.
Yeah, you combine that with filling in the dots that do exist in the system, and I've run quite a few campaigns with that thing, and I think the most memorable one I did in the time where I really figured out that it worked, aside from some of the messages that people sent me with like their character sheets and stuff saying, I played role-playing for the first time and it worked. I was like, I get really happy about that, but I think when I really figured out that this system had something special is when I ran a session for my parents.
Oh, good litmus test.
Me and my family, we were on a vacation. We had those moments of vacation that you never expect. Those moments of downtime in a vacation that you never expect, but always happen, where there's nothing going on. There's really nothing to do. You never really imagine that when you book the vacation, but it happens. And I was like, hey, I made this thing and I brought some dice. So I set up a few one-shots for them, and long story short, within 3 hours, my parents had murdered each other and my sister several times over.
It's not how I thought that statement was going to go.
And I learned a lot about my family and about DMing for a couple of really rogue presences that day, as well as just, hey, this works well enough for my parents to really bond over mutual
destruction.
Yeah, that's a good way of terming.
Are they gamers? Do they play any games, or is this their first time playing a role-playing game?
First time playing a physical role-playing game ever. I set up they set up their characters within 10 minutes, and they were off to the races. Whether or not that's a good thing, based off of
what happened
later enabled.
Yeah,
I can't say, but
well, they picked it up quickly. It is true though. Like, you learn a lot about people like your parents if you play role-playing games with them. Like, I learned that my mom is super violent. She just wanted to go around killing things.
Right, and I guess that was true of Xalavier's parents too. Like, they're like, sure, why not?
My dad wants to talk. Let's talk about it first. That's what my mom just took him out.
So she's like Joe Manganiello. Got it.
Yeah. Careful.
Kill first. Good to know.
Later.
I tried to do this something very similar, so I'm glad that it worked out better for you. We had downtime on vacation. I brought some dice just to be on the safe side. Like, oh yeah, if we want to get into it. Well, my kids are 4 and 6, so I was trying to I don't want to make a big thing of it, but let's just go ahead and, you guys want to play right now? All right, cool, let's play. And then, but for some reason it didn't latch a hold of their young minds so quickly, and I think I need more toys.
Did they have characters? They didn't have characters.
No, because I didn't want to bog them down with math. So I just was. I have sheets of notes that they have in front of them that I'm like, write down, what's in your inventory and stuff like that. Like whenever they got something new, and they were like, kind of the first session we played with, they were playing with binoculars and stuff. So I was like actual physical binoculars at the table. So I'm like, you have those in the game. You have them. They're magical, and they can, you can have an advantage on perception checks or something like that. So I had like little stuff like that, and try to describe what was going on, and then it was about half hour, and my youngest was like, I don't want to play anymore. I'm like, okay.
Did Edna want to play, though?
No, they were all kind of done at that point. They were also kind of sick, too. They had, flu symptoms, so maybe I was pushing it a little too hard when they were a little bit crazy. But that vacation downtime was what I was hoping for, was that, all right, everybody's going to want to be interested and go do something, but I wish I had a system like Ellipses where, I could, it was about coloring, because I feel like that would have, they needed a more physical activity at the table to draw them in. Not just theater of the mind style.
Maybe they do need character sheets.
Right? Yeah, maybe they do.
So can you use Ellipses on, is it skinnable for all role-playing games? Like there's a modified version of it, or?
Absolutely. I designed it so you could basically pen and port it into anything because, as I said, I like to do a lot of one-shots, especially weird ones. So I ran a session where people told ghost stories to each other and then had to fight the manifestations of their ghost stories in the middle of a really crowded restaurant.
Wait, it took place in a really crowded restaurant, or you did this in a really crowded restaurant?
Did this in a really crowded restaurant, very loud. Somehow it worked, and they won by, I think they utilized the greed of the ghost guy's dad in the therapy session. They were like, okay, this therapy session is going to cost you quite a bit. And the ghost guy's dad was like, whoa, I can't pay for this. And that ended up resolving the family dispute quite easily.
Oh. As it would.
As it would.
And then I read something else about you. So, I'm like a hard-hitting journalist. I do a lot of research on people. But this post-apocalyptic bank tellers?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What? I like the sound of this. This is a story, and the people left behind after the death of their god. What? What is this? And where can I find it?
Oh gosh, there was so the first game I ever made, I actually was going to get out of the game industry, including tabletop, a few years ago, because I was like, man, I've been doing this for a really long time. I started when I was really young.
As opposed to now, when you're really young.
Yeah, basically.
Really young versus really young.
Right. It's a difference.
Right.
Yeah. Really, really young. Maybe we can add a couple more words there. really nail it down.
Yeah.
But I'd seen so many people sort of fall by the wayside, and I'd seen so many examples of this whole gaming thing not working out, that I was like, okay, I'm going to do the normal college thing, but first I should probably make a game. And I got hooked. The first game I ever made was very very influenced by Planescape Torment's philosophy of like foregone conclusions. Like your adventure is what matters, the journey to the end, because the end is basically kind of set up from the beginning. And that game was called All Hail the Spider God. So I was thinking about ways to expand Ellipses, because what I did was I released the system for free, but I did a bunch of, if people didn't have like some awesome setting like D&D to bring the system to, I wanted to provide a bunch of little like session starters, like, hey, here are your post-apocalyptic bank tellers in this thing called Tel Virgo, or your con men archaeologists showing off like artifacts in the post-apocalyptic future, like trailers and like trailer parks and like malls and like just junk and detritus of the present to people in the future as basically con men. I wanted to provide sort of those sort of little scenario starters, and when I was thinking of ways to expand it, because I kind of did it in a rolling model, like every month I'd add some stuff for a while, I thought, okay, can I have another adventure where this, following on from the events of All Hail the Spider God, someone could play a role-playing session. And I found a way, and that's in the scenario now. It's the last worshippers of the Spider God. After the Spider God dies, they step out into the wider world, and it's like the world moved on without them. Their credit cards don't work anymore. Bureaucracy has sort of taken hold, and they essentially don't have identity, so they kind of have to figure out who they're going to become and what they're going to do. It's a very Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt scenario, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But it's weird.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I like all that. I mean, that's, you know, the way to get the setting across, and then here's adventures and stories and things that you can play around with. I think is a really good model. I mean, it's almost like 5th edition does that exact same thing with like, oh yeah, here's a system, you can play it for download our basic rules for free on our website, but it's the adventures and the content that'd be the thing that you end up coming back for again and again. So it seems like a similar system to what you devised there.
I plead the 5th.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It does make sense.
It does make sense.
I know. Shelley's good because she actually writes up questions.
I cut and pasted.
Cut and pasted questions.
Yeah.
Which is good stuff. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about, because I was a game journalist before I started doing this stuff. So
awesome.
I know a little bit about the PC Gamer crew. But yeah, talk a little bit about what your column is over there.
So when I first started making games and I started to really dig into the people I've gotten to know more in the enthusiast press, I began to be amazed by how many, as I said, focusing on the detail, how many little things are super hard to get across in the game. I was amazed that, 60 FPS games that people demand, that means that within 1 second, in those 16 frames, you have like point however many seconds to, I think it's 0.16 seconds to compute all of the data and all of the changing factors in the game before the next frame uploads for a 60 FPS game to work. And that blew my mind, because I was just like, 60 FPS, that's good. And I thought nothing more of what really went into it. So I pitched, so one of the lead editors at PC Gamer had put out a call for really unique pitches, and I pitched a column or a series called "Making Games is Effing Hard," about the little things that people don't notice but are really hard and really complex and show the beauty of digital game development. And I've been doing that for months now, and apparently it's having an effect. There's folks who are really it's really opening their eyes as to what goes into making a game. Because I know I was surprised.
Yeah.
I'm surprised every month, every time I research something, I put out a call for something, I'm like, oh, gosh, there's so much more here to learn. So if I can pass on a little bit of that to the readers of PC Gamer, I'm very happy. And so far, they seem to be enjoying it. So I'm stoked.
That's cool. Yeah,
I love that. I love that idea.
It is one of those things. I think it came into focus when Hello Games did. I'm blanking on the name of the
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky. Yes, exactly. Where there were so many comments from gamers. It was like, oh, you just put multiplayer in. It'll take a week to develop that. That's no problem. It's so easy. Why don't you do that? And so many game journalists were like, whoa. Like maybe we don't get this across on a daily basis, but it would take more than a week to code the back end to create a multiplayer segment from a single player game. And right. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions in the audience that, because it's so easy to just download a game and start playing it, that many people just don't realize there's so much technical know-how and skill that's necessary in order to do what you're saying of like rendering 60 frames per second. Like that's insane, and it changes based on your inputs if it is a multiplayer game, the inputs on millions of people who are playing that game at the exact same time. It's kind of mind-boggling to realize because it works so well. But when it doesn't work well, it goes back to what we were talking about, the details. Like if one thing doesn't work well, people will be like, whoa. And they have millions of things to apply. But it's kudos to you for coming up with an idea of being like, hey, here's teachable moments of like this is what it is actually doing on making this menu screen or something like that, right? Like that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, every month I end up with like over 5,000 words of material.
Oh my
and I gotta cut that down to like 950.
Ooh, man, I'm so sorry.
You should write a book with the excess material.
That's a good idea. You should do that.
Yeah.
Start. That's just one more thing for you to.
Just one more thing.
You can do that, Tim.
You get another project.
College can wait.
Yeah, put it up on Amazon or something like that for a book. I would buy it.
I would too. 2 sales right there.
I'm already working on a book, so I guess it couldn't hurt to add another one.
Why not?
No, but sorry, we cut you off. You were saying every day you're trying to get down from 5,000 words to 950, and it's hard to do, right? Even that.
Oh, it's not so much hard, even though it is, but it's remarkable how much doesn't make in and how much I end up learning on my end about this stuff. I feel like I'm like, again, like the Raven Queen, I'm viewing all of these secrets and all this material, and I just have to like distill it down to this little bit that I get to show to people. And even that bit, making that bit as good as possible and really giving the developers their due is something that really motivates me. And so the fact that people dig it as well is something that inspires me even more.
So I used to write a column about The Bachelor, and I would end up with like 5,000-6,000 words after a 2-hour episode, and I had to cut it down to 500. So I totally feel your pain.
Oh my gosh!
It was the hardest thing. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I mean, all that was just gold. That was like 4,500 words of just gold that just nobody ever saw.
I bet that was more entertaining than the show itself.
Yes. But anyway, more about your column. So topic-wise, do you choose a developer that you want to talk to, or is there just certain aspects of a game that you think, hey, it might be cool to learn how this gets made, or do you target certain games? How do you come up with what you want to... Because like, there's a lot that you can mine for in how to make a digital game.
Hopefully I'll come back like 3 years later and I'll still be
Well, the more complex games get, the more you'll have to talk about. So this is it's constantly evolving.
I usually start with some sort of topic like, I wonder how in-game cameras work.
Yeah.
And I thought that would just be one easy piece. Like, okay, here's how in-game cameras work. And I ended up with 2 and did a 3rd one on the way.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Now I want to know, how do in-game cameras work?
So many different ways.
Read the column to find out.
As a result of things I've learned, I will never make an isometric game. Just never. Not going to do it.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, does this affect you in your future game design? Like, are you going too far behind the curtain that it's like, ugh, I don't want to know how, I don't want to do this? Or does it inspire you to want to keep creating?
The more I make things, and the more I talk to people about how they make things, the more I realize how much unplumbed territory there is.
Yeah, that's cool.
Despite all of the amazing things I discover looking into things like, okay, how do cameras work, or what was one of the first big ones? How are text boxes made? Seeing the variety of approaches that come to that, on one hand, it's like a little bit disheartening because it's like everybody's reinventing the wheel, and the amount of work that goes into that to providing a slightly different experience, the exponential amount of work that goes into that is often missed or ignored. Despite all of that, seeing the immense possibility space and the people plumbing it, and doing it myself as a game developer across a bunch of different projects since I'm freelance, physical and digital, it really is great creative fuel, because it's like, man, if these folks can calculate how to make a spherical planet appear in a hex-based grid, which is a story I was recently told. There's this 4X game called Predestination, that it is mathematically impossible to put a spherical object inside of a hex grid, but they found a way to pull it off. And finding things like that just energizes me to come up with more clever ways to not just make things, but to cheat. Because the cheating is, again, I talk about details, but really the cheating, the bending the rules and the reality and the things behind the scenes to make something appear a certain way, to make people feel a certain way, that end goal is what's so cool. So learning about how that end goal is reached through all of these different ways just gets me excited to find more ways to do it myself, and makes me want to, again, appreciate and spread the message of, holy crap, all of the amazing space there's still left to explore, and not just digital games, but physical games as well.
Yeah. I'm curious as to why you say you don't want to make an isometric game, since Planescape Torment was an isometric game. Why were you? I mean, you could talk about more about what makes Torment really cool, because I jumped into it with the Beamdog Enhanced Edition recently, and I dig it on a kind of a visceral writerly level as well. But then, why? What's specifically challenging about isometric games that you wouldn't want to jump into?
As far as isometric cameras, very briefly, aside from what I talked about in the column, isometric cameras, basically, they have all of the perspective issues of 3D, and even more depending on whether or not you can move that camera. So if you move behind a building, or you can't quite see where an enemy is, but they can see you, there's all of these little problems that have to be worked out. So you have the seeming simplicity of 2D combined with all of the complexity of 3D interfaces. That means that you have to find a lot of really weird ways to build things to make them appear simple. And that's the case for any types of game, but isometric more than anything, it's like, oh, it's just a 2D thing, you're walking along the ground. No, there's so much more that goes into it that, like, when I consider all of the design problems that come from an isometric game, I'm like, yeah, personally, I'm not going to go there. But I enjoy telling the stories of folks who do, like the developers who made Brigador were very open with their time, telling me, like, okay, these are the problems we encountered making an isometric game in the modern era, but here's how we also solved them to provide a particular unique game experience to hit that awesome end goal. As for Planescape Torment, aside from the idea that the actions that you do, you carry them with you throughout the adventure, the idea of foregone conclusions, the idea of different planes of reality with gods and monsters and quote unquote normal beings all being a little bit special, and the power of belief. I think there's so many thematic elements about Planescape that are resonant to this day that I really value that when I played it, I was in a place to appreciate it. We had just moved to Italy. I had a borrowed copy of Planescape Torment on my computer, and there was no internet. And the internet, once we did get it, was very, very slow. So I would just boot up. I was like, okay, this seems like a good time to finally watch this Mad Men thing that people are talking about. And it would take hours for a single episode of Mad Men to load. And as I got further into Planescape Torment, not being able to access my Steam library or anything, I actually noticed myself pausing or even straight up destroying hours of buffering by closing the window and just going back to Torment because I was so engrossed in that world.
Oh.
And that's when I realized that, Torment was something very special that I'd probably carry with me for the rest of my life. And thus far, it seems to have had that effect.
I like that. I think I'll tell the Beamdog folks or Chris Avalon when I see him next that what they created was better than Mad Men.
If I could put that on the
There's
box art of Planescape Torment, I would.
Yeah, right?
There you go. Better than Mad Men.
PC Gamer says.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
Good stuff. All right, man. Well, I feel like we could talk a lot more. You're very able to talk about all of these fun things that are also things that I like talking about.
You too.
Yeah.
Very able to talk.
I am not able to talk.
Things.
But so we got to have you back on and pick your brain even more about things that are going on. But how can people find out about Ellipses and the other work you're doing at PC Gamer?
PC Gamer magazine comes out every month on newsstands, so you can.
Do people buy it still? Like I feel like it's so much more of an online thing at this point. But
yeah, the magazine is still quite the thing.
Still get
I was surprised.
I know. I mean, I still see it when I'm traveling and stuff. I'll be like, oh yeah, there's a physical magazine.
There's something about a physical magazine though that's like I just want.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you're
books. I'm totally fine buying.
Which is so weird because you're such a young person that it seems like you wouldn't want that anymore. You would.
I mean, personally, I will take a physical book over a digital book any day. So I totally get that impulse.
Yeah.
Aside from my PC Gamer work, though, which goes up on I do assorted other things for the website as well. Aside from print and web stuff, which is on PCGamer.com or on newsstands, you can find my tabletop experiments at xalaviermakeswords.itch.io. And the easiest way to follow my work and see what I'm doing, as well as the horrible, horrible puns I come up with on a daily basis.
Ooh, I love puns.
Is twitter.com/Rit Nelson, WRIT Nelson.
Cool.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for calling in this late from Italia. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you some more soon.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love that. May I close out with a pun?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so if you get John Hamm, the Mad Men actor, from just a really, really nice car, do you think he would let you call it a hamster wheel?
Yes.
Yes? Why wouldn't he?
I would hope so.
If he doesn't already,
no problem.
He will
now I'm going to fly to LA and ask John Hamm tell him that pun for him. I'm sure he's never heard it before.
Take care, everyone.
You're the best.
Bye. Thank you.
See you later, Xalavier. Bye-bye.
He's adorable.
He is, yes, very interested in some things I'm very much interested in too. So it's good conversation.
We might have to go to Italy next time.
I mean,
finish that conversation.
We didn't get invited
over some pizza and wine,
but maybe next time. Yeah,
we'll totally invited us in the beginning.
Oh, that's right.
Well, it wasn't so much an invitation as like, oh yeah, if you were here, I guess I'd let you come in.
Which sounds like a hearty welcome.
All I need.
You're like,
doors open.
We're like vampires. All I gotta do is at least kind of slyly,
yeah.
maybe be passively aggressive.
Hello, Nelson family.
We are now here for you. We shall be playing the D and the D together. I hear you're evil people.
I hear you murdered each other.
We're gonna have an evil campaign in Italy. Let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
Very cool stuff. What's going on with you? Do you want to sign off with anything super fun, or just tell me your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is Shelly Moo.
What about Avalon Hill Games 2?
Avalon Hill 2, number 2.
Oh, there's not a Games 2. It's just Avalon Hill 2.
Avalon Hill 2.
It's the second Avalon Hill. The first Avalon Hill was cool.
Was pre-me, and now it's me.
And now it's just you.
Me. I'm number 2.
Who does number 2 work for?
No one.
No one. Not at all.
Yeah.
You can find out about this here D&D game at DungeonsandDragons.com. Check it out on DragonMag.com, or you can download Dragon Plus onto your Android or Apple or any other kind of device you want when you can, and find out all about what's going on in Dungeons & Dragons world.
D&D is always with you with the Dragon Plus app.
That's true.
Doesn't it,
it does
aggregate all the content?
Yeah, So like, really if you follow us on Twitter or are a friend of ours, like us on the Facebooks, you can follow that all on the Dragon Plus app. You're right. All those posts and things we do talking about
all in one place.
This here show here, even you can all do it through that app. So that's a good point. Yes. Awesome. I'm at Greg Tito. You can follow me there on the Twitters or on Instagram at Greg_Tito.
The underscore.
And then of course follow Dungeons & Dragons, as I said, at Wizards_DND, or like us on the Facebooks, or we're also on the Instagram, I think on Wizards_DND on Instagram. So lots of fun stuff happening all around the social Twitterverse. Make it happen. I think it's time for us to get out of here. So we're gonna.
Oh no!
The rocks are falling. Everyone's dead.
That hurts.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.